sit here.
Beware of libertarians bearing
Stand.
gifts. Did you see that story online? You can sit here. It was,
There's a couple of seats over here, Betsy.
You can
you can
sit
sit there. Betsy, you can sit over by me if you want.
There's 2 seats here, Matt.
Like I said, we already got that.
Hi there.
Hey, how you doing?
Well, yeah, I mean, you get out, that far, I probably won't be driving the
You never called me about how
There's
good
probably
your
as
website.
far as I'll get. I'll be 2.5, 3 hours out.
Okay, the first item on the agenda. Now that all the cameras are rolling and all the streams are
I
streaming,
appreciate help.
Ken Krawchuk, a candidate for wanting to run for the Libertarian nomination as governor, is going to be here to give us a few words on his behalf. A sales pitch, if you will, to see whether or not he should get the nomination of the LPPA or if NODA should get the nomination.
It's coming down to
Ken, the stage is yours, sir.
Thank you, Bob. Well, first of all, thank you to the Board of Directors, which I'm a member today. I'm representing Montgomery County. Thank you for inviting me here to speak today. I was kind of surprised. I learned about it secondhand after the event was scheduled, but I made it anyway. Now, what I'd like to do is give my standard stump speech. It's about 10 minutes long, and then talk about how I see the campaign unfurling for the rest of the year. Now, I know it looks like maybe half of you have already heard my stump speech, so you guys can snooze or whatever, but it looks like this entire half of the room has not heard it yet. So, give the stump speech, talk about the campaign, and then open up for Q&A. Sound good?
I was going to say 20 minutes for the stump speech,
I was going to take 10.
however long you want.
I second that motion.
I think it should be 30.
All right, 30. Second. All right, let's start at the beginning. My name is Ken Krawchuk. I am seeking the Libertarian Party's nomination for governor of Pennsylvania this year, 2014. I'm 60 years old, born and raised in Philadelphia, North Philadelphia to be precise. My wife Roberta and I have been married now for 36 years, and we have 3 kids. The kids pick on us because they say, all our friends' parents are divorced, second marriages. What's wrong with you guys? We have 2 grandchildren, and as of yesterday, I'm allowed to announce to the world we have a 3rd on the way. Our eldest daughter, Melanie, in Seattle, is pregnant. Woohoo! Thank you very much. Professionally, I'm an information technology entrepreneur. I've been running my own computer consulting firm since 1988, and I hold 3 United States patents related to database theory. So if there are any geeks in the audience, maybe after the meeting here, we could sit down and compare some notes. Also an author. My first book came out Valentine's Day last year, Atlas Snubbed. It's a parody sequel to Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. And I'm calling it my platform novel because a lot of the ideas I'm running on are presented in here as fiction. People always say, oh, how's that going to work? Well, now there's a stylized answer that people can turn to. I'm also a Toastmaster. I've been a member of Toastmasters International for about 16, 17 years now, and I would highly recommend that to anybody for any walk of life. It's a good way to learn public speaking and leadership skills. So I'm a family man, businessman, inventor, author, Toastmaster, but most importantly, I'm a libertarian. I've been a libertarian since 1993, and I've run twice for governor of Pennsylvania, once in 1998 against Tom Ridge, and once in 2002 against Ed Rendell. And both times I set records for the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania for the office of governor. In 2002, I blew all my own records away too, which is pretty funny. It's important to note that I'm a libertarian because we libertarians are different than the 2 old parties because we are the party of principle. Every law we support, every law we oppose can all be traced back to one idea. The idea that your life is yours, that your property is yours, that you have the God-given, inalienable right to live your life your way without interference, provided only that you respect the rights and property of others. That's it. That's what it means to be a libertarian. Your life, your way. And the public has reacted very positively to this message. Since our founding in 1971, we have grown to become the 3rd largest party, hands down, outnumbering all the other 3rd parties put together. And that's true whether you look at voter registrations or elected officials. As of the last number I saw, there are about 145 elected or appointed officials in public office in the United States, and about 40 of those here in Pennsylvania. So we have about 1/4 of all elected libertarians here in Pennsylvania. I like to, again, that's more than all the other 3rd parties put together. I like to call us the 800-pound chihuahua of politics. So there's a little bit about me, a little bit about the party. Let me tell you a few things about what you can expect from a Libertarian governor. Obviously, you're going to find somebody who's going to respect your right to live your life your way. Now, as I've traveled the Commonwealth, I've heard a lot of issues being raised. I'd like to touch on the top 3 right now, just within the next couple of minutes. And of course, number 1 is always, always taxes. Who thinks taxes are too low? Obviously, the sound in here is terrible. No, of course they're too low. Everybody knows they're too high. The reason why taxes are so high is because spending is so high. The reason why spending is so high is because the politicians are glad-handing your tax money all around the place. There are so many unconstitutional programs, so many pork barrel programs. When I'm governor of Pennsylvania, that trend will end. I have here with me a copy of my job description, the Constitution for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I'll get it right.
Amen.
And one of the powers that it gives me is the power of the veto. I am promising I will veto every single tax increase. It's about time to hold the line on taxes. Because do you know that over the last 50 years, taxes have been rising in Pennsylvania at more than 3 times the rate of inflation? So that means back in 1964, when you were paying $100 in Pennsylvania tax, today it's over $2,200. Even though if it was tracking with inflation, it should be about $600. Doesn't matter if it's a Democrat in office, doesn't matter if it's a Republican, doesn't matter if it's a low inflation rate or high inflation rate from the Carter era. Over the last 50 years, more than 3 times the rate of inflation. So not only will I end that trend,
Democrat in office, doesn't matter if it's a Republican, doesn't matter.
I hate listening to myself. So there's another thing I can do to hold that line on taxes, because one of the other powers granted to me by the Constitution is the line item veto. So you take things like that unconstitutional database of gun owners, just defund it. The Milk Marketing Board, defund it. And it'll take a supermajority from the legislature to override my vetoes. Now, they may be able to do some, but I'm sure they're not going to be able to do all. So we're going to be able to cut that trend for ever-increasing size of government in Pennsylvania. So that's the first issue, taxes. They're going to go down once I'm elected. Second issue, crime. The Commonwealth Foundation here in Harrisburg, they came out with a study, and they found that 95% of all crimes are committed by only 5% of the criminals. So that means that if we could cut back somehow on these criminals, we could cut crime. Go back to my job description. One of the powers granted to the governor is power over parole. I'm promising on day 1, I will eliminate parole for violent criminals. Since 95% of the crimes are committed by 5% of the criminals, we are guaranteed to reduce crime by keeping these guys in jail. And there are a lot of them. And we're going to keep them in there. When I'm governor, they're going to serve every single day of their sentence. Now, a lot of times when I say that, people say, oh, Ken, what are you, crazy? Prisons are already overcrowded. You're going to build more prisons? It takes up 11% of the Pennsylvania budget already. No. We don't have to do that. Because there are a lot of people in prison currently who do not belong there. And one of the biggest groups are drug offenders, quote-unquote offenders. Last number I saw, they make up about 17% of Pennsylvania's state prison population. That's a lot of people. So $1 in 5 of your tax dollars is going to keep potheads in prison. And there's a darker side to this too. Right now there are prison caps. Our prisons are so crowded, it's gotten to the point where with these caps, the courts are ordering people to be released. And right now we're at the point where we're releasing murderers and rapists from our overcrowded prisons to make room for pot-smoking Grateful Dead fans. Thank you. It's insane. Who thinks a pothead belongs in jail? Yeah, wise guy. I pay him to do this. He's my Jerry Lewis up in the balcony there. Well, again, turning to my job description, I can end that travesty. The governor has the power over the pardon. My first day in office, I promise I will pardon all non-violent drug offenders. Now, of course, if you dealt drugs to kids, you're going to stay in jail. If you committed a real crime, you're going to stay in jail. But if there's no victim, there's no crime. And you have a get-out-of-jail-free card from this governor. Not only would it apply to pot smokers, but anybody who may not have some little piece of paper that the government didn't give them, say, for example, a carry permit, If you're being responsible with your firearm, but you're getting into trouble over the fact that you didn't have that piece of paper, again, I will grant you an immediate pardon my first day in office. No victim, no crime. So that's my approach to crime. We're going to keep the criminals in jail and get the non-criminals out of jail, and we're going to be able to shrink the size of our prison population at the same time. The third issue, a lot of people say this one should be first, is education. Education in Pennsylvania is a mess, and some places a lot worse than others. The main reason for that is because 95% of our kids in Pennsylvania all go to the same school system, the government school system. It's a virtual monopoly. And like all monopolies, costs are high, choice is low, and quality is not always the best. I have a plan to fix our school system, and the way to do that is the same way you defeat any monopoly. You introduce competition. And the way we introduce competition, I'm not going to talk about charter schools or cyber schools or anything like that. I'm going to talk about bringing somebody into the equation who has been ignored for far too long. The parents. Remember them? They're the ones who brought the kids in the first place. Specifically, what I would like to do is I would like to give parents the power to choose any government school for their kid, and the funding which would have gone to the local school will follow the child to the school of the parent's choice. That way, good schools get more funding and grow. Poor schools get less funding and will be forced to close down. Now, it's important to note, when I say good and poor, I'm not talking about my opinion or your opinion or some unelected board of education here in Harrisburg or some out-of-state Common Core curriculum. No, no, no. I'm talking about good or bad in the minds of the parents. So the parents will decide what the good schools are. The parents will decide what the bad schools are, not some unelected bureaucrat. Now some people say, oh, Ken, you're going to close down my neighborhood school, huh? Well, no and yes. Because this good school that's getting all of the students, they're not all going to fit. So rather than turning away students, this good school can take over the administration of this failing school and use those same techniques that parents like so much over here and bring them back into the neighborhoods. So that way, without spending another dime on education, we can improve the schools. Again, improve in terms of what the parents think is better. That's the immediate plan. I have a longer term plan where we could cut property taxes in half. What I did is I called all the local schools around Abington Township, which is where I live just outside of Philadelphia. Called the private schools just to find out what they charge. Go out on the web, take a look. And I was getting numbers 10,000, 5,000, 15,000. Some of the high-end schools, like the Friends School, over $20,000, Germantown Academy, over $20,000. Ignoring the high-end exclusive schools, it averages out to about $9,000 a year for a private education in the Philadelphia suburbs. Then I took the Abington School District, the official government school. I took their budget, divided it by the number of students. Guess how much it costs to educate one kid in Abington Township? Over $18,000, more than double the average cost of a private education. So if the school boards, instead of building their own Taj Mahals, if instead they place the students in the local private schools instead of the government schools, we could cut the cost in half, and we could follow up and cut property taxes in half. Now, unfortunately, I do not have the power to do that directly. I'd have to work through the legislature to make that change. So that's my plan for education. I got a lot of other things I could talk about. I could talk about abortion, fracking in the environment, and big, long things, but let me stop right here to say that you can find all of my positions, many of them, and there's more going out there all the time, on my website, which is kenk.org, kenk.org. Now, ordinarily at this point, I would open up the floor to questions and answers. If I was giving this speech to a PTA or League of Women Voters or some candidate event, ordinarily I'd stop there and go into my closing statement and open up for questions. But since this is a libertarian group, let me tell you what I think would be a good way to approach the election season this year. What I've done is I divided it into 3 chunks. Chunk 1 is what we're in now, pre-nomination period, coming up to our convention, which is going to be on Saturday, February 22nd. Second one is the petition drive, where we get on the ballot, and the third one is where all the fun is. We're out there on the campaign trail. Let me take them one at a time. First part, what I'm doing is I'm traveling the state. I've visited over a dozen different counties so far, and they're all out on YouTube. You can take a look at the video. But I'm out there just to introduce myself, but also to find candidates. One of the biggest things that gets the Libertarian Party attention is to have candidates on the ballot. So what I'm doing, and a lot of you, I've already visited your counties, you know this, I'm looking for people willing to run for state representative. I have a new goal. So some of you people who I saw a month ago, this is news as well. I've heard from so many people who want to run for state representative, state senate, that I think we can do something unique in Pennsylvania this year. What I would like to do is, out of the 203 state representative seats that are open, I would like to post a Libertarian candidate for more than half of them. For the first time in Pennsylvania history, I would like to see a third party have candidates for at least half of those seats. That's one of the main reasons I'm touring the state right now, is to scare up people, to get people energized, and I'm seeing it all over the place. I'm seeing it up in Schuylkill County, I'm seeing it out in Allegheny County, I'm seeing it in Chester, in Bucks. You should see Bucks County, and Schuylkill County too. I mean, fired up, because they're electing people to office. When you have candidates, nothing pushes a county organization up in the scale of interest more than running a candidate. In fact, when I go to the different counties here, they say that their attendance there is roughly double just because I'm there to speak. So there's some proof for you right there. One of the reasons why we want to have so many state rep candidates, identify them in the first part, nominate them at the convention. But the reason why is for that second part, the petition drive. This year, we're lucky, quote unquote lucky. Typically, in order to get on the ballot, we need 20, 25,000 signatures. This year is a historic low. We need only 16,639 signatures minimum to get on the ballot. It's never, to my knowledge, it's never been lower than that in Pennsylvania since the last time they changed that law. But I think we can do that petition drive. First of all, we learned a lot in 2012. We have a lot of software in place, a lot of trained volunteers in place. I think we can withstand a challenge. I don't think it's going to be a problem. But what I want to do is I want to get all those signatures right away and get it out of the way. And I want to do it in one day. In 1994, the first time I ran for public office, ran for state representative, what I did is I got a handful of people, 6 people, and I put them at the busiest polling places within the state rep district. And as people come out of the polling place, they, excuse me, would you support democracy in your neighborhood? Sign a petition to get the Libertarian Party candidates on the ballot. And in my experience, about a third of them signed, quarter to a third of them signed. On that one day, primary day in 1994, with just a couple of us there, not too many of us there, we came away with over 1,000 signatures. So what I would like to do is take that approach statewide. That's why I want state rep candidates, because they're the ones who can lead the charge in their local area. Because if we can get everybody around the state to go to the polls on primary day and get the signatures, if we just have 30 state rep candidates and each one of them get 1,000 signatures, we've got over 30,000 signatures, which is double the minimum. So that's at least what I'd like to get, is at least 30. But then, like I said before, I'm reaching for that 102, so we can do the half. If we did that on one day, we could eliminate the entire petition drive and then focus our energies on running for office. So mark your calendars. This is the second reason why I'm out here. Reason number 1, of course, is to find the candidates. Reason number 2, May 20th, primary day. Tell your boss you're taking off. Do some study. Go down to your local board of elections and find out what the busiest polling places are. Get some of your friends together, especially you folks that are going to be running for state representative. Get your friends together. You don't need many. 5 of them, 7 of them, and you'll be able to get 1,000 signatures. Typically, a state rep needs about 300 signatures, but you'll be way over the top if you make that approach. May 20th, mark your calendar. Because once that's over, that petition drive, then comes the fun part. Once you're on the ballot, you have legitimacy. Everybody starts calling you. You hear from the League of Women Voters who invite you to debates. Reporters will call you up and ask you questions. They'll write down the answers. and they'll print them. It's free advertising for the Libertarian Party. I was just in Johnstown last Wednesday, and the guy there, the reporter that I met, he wrote a 50-column inch article about me, and he did it right. He didn't get anything wrong. If I was going to go back and mark it up, I wouldn't change a word. This is what's available to us once we get on the ballot. It's also available a little bit early. I'm already getting invited to stuff. In fact, day before yesterday, I received an email from Channel 6, the ABC affiliate in Philadelphia, inviting me to a May 8th debate, gubernatorial candidates debate. I'm going to be on TV already, and I don't even have the nomination yet, and they're already lining up for that. I have several others. The West Philadelphia Parkside Business Association. I'll be there in March. One after another, they're all stacking up. I'm already getting questionnaires from people in the mail. So this is the fun part. This is what we're aiming for. So we're going to get on that ballot. Once we're on the ballot, then we have all the fun stuff. But I'm getting the fun early. The third main point that I'm making as I go around the state is a lot of people, when I say, are you going to run for state rep? They're like, oh, no, I couldn't do that. I couldn't stand up and talk in public. I wouldn't want to get up and face the opponents. Well, you can. All it takes is just a little bit of training. And the best place you can get that training, wait for Dave to smile, Toastmasters International. For those, Dean is drinking, yes. For those who don't know, the mission of Toastmasters is to provide a supportive environment for learning public speaking and leadership skills. I'm a product of that training. I used to be afraid to stand up in public. I remember once I went to a town hall meeting with my congressman, and I went to ask him about the space program. I was a Democrat back then. And I started the question, and I couldn't finish. An asthma attack halfway through the question. I was so scared. But those days are gone now. What do we got, maybe 15, 20 people in this room? I can address a crowd of thousands just as readily as I've been standing here talking with you people. And it was Toastmasters that gave me that ability. There are Toastmasters clubs all around the world. There are about 14,000 clubs, last time I heard, over 300,000 members. I know that there's at least 10 of them here in this Harrisburg area. They're all over the state. Go to toastmasters.org. That will give you the ability to stand up in public and present the libertarian message. We libertarians have the best message on the planet, freedom. But that message is useless if we can't communicate it. So that's the third thing I'd like you to do. Go out to toastmasters.org, type in your zip code, find a club, join up. I guarantee you, in 6 months you won't recognize yourself, just from the speaking ability you'll gain. So there are the three things. Candidates. Who's running for state rep this year? Oh, come on. Is this a political
I'm thinking about it again.
Good.
I ran in the special election, so I'm considering it.
Good. Thank you, George.
I nominate Steve Sheets.
Well, thank you.
There you go. Don't we do that at the Montgomery County meeting?
I think we did. And I nominate,
You.
no,
Ah, yes.
I nominate Richard Schwartz.
there you go.
All right. But the point is, every meeting that I'm going to, there are several people who are already willing to run for office. And if I've already been to a dozen places, multiply it out. We already have at least 30 candidates. And we're still gearing up. So I think with this 102 candidates, half of the state assembly, I think it's a very doable goal. So there are three things. Find candidates. When you go back to your counties, find candidates. Number two, May 20th, tell your boss or your wife or your husband or whoever you're taking off on May 20th. And the third one is join Toastmasters International. Now that's pretty much everything I want to say except one final point. When I'm out there on the campaign trail and I'm presenting the ideas, people say, oh, Ken, I love your ideas. We got to get pot smokers out of prison. We got to keep criminals in there. We should have parents deciding educational issues, not unelected bureaucrats. But you know, Ken, get real. You're not going to win. Wait a minute. I can win. And I can win this year. Let me tell you how. Typically, in a gubernatorial race in Pennsylvania, there's nothing else really going on. State rep, state senate, Congress, no local races, no school boards, no town councils. The two old parties have alienated so many voters, nobody votes. So in the gubernatorial year, 35%, 38%, right in around there. If you crunch the numbers, in a competitive three-way race, which this year is looking up like it's going to be, All it takes to win would be to attract the vote of 1 out of 8 voting age Pennsylvanians. Actually, it's about 1 out of 9, but I know somebody's going to call me on the rounding error. But 1 out of 8. So if you're addressing a crowd, let's say there's 8 people there, if 7 of them say, "Oh, Ken, you're nuts," but 1 of them says, "That makes sense," that's all it takes. 1 out of 8. So when you go back to your respective counties, fire up your people. Fire them up not only for state rep, but also tell them that we can win this year. 1 out of 8 is all it takes. We need their help to do it, because you have to remember the mantra of the grassroots activists, which is easy to remember. 10 words, 2 letters each. If it is to be, it is up to me, or up to us. Either way it works. If they don't do anything, well, we're going to keep on getting what we've been getting. If they keep on voting the way they've been voting, we're going to keep on getting what we've been getting. And I don't know about you, but I have had enough.
Amen.
Thank you for your attention. I'll take questions on any subject.
Just one clarification. You were mentioning the school and funding and letting the money follow the kid.
Mm-hmm.
You specifically said to other public schools, but would you include also private schools? Is that just a...
No, I didn't say that, and I don't include that, because there are little complications that pop up, and the biggest one is Article 3, Section 15, which says that no public money can be used for sectarian schools. Second reason is that what you're talking about there is essentially vouchers, and I fear vouchers, because once a school starts accepting public money, they have to start accepting public regulation. I call it the golden rule of politics. He who has the gold makes the rules. So if we start giving vouchers, which is essentially what you're saying there, then private schools won't be able to call their underwear their own within a very short time. So, and it's also an easier sell to just take the money that's already there and let the parents decide which direction it's going to go. But one thing I forgot to mention is that does not include transportation costs. So if I'm down in Philadelphia and I'm going to send my kid to a school in Erie, well, I could do that, but I'd have to be the one to drive them back and forth. Good question. Yes, Yvonne?
So you mentioned the line item veto and the things that you plan to do, and as governor, if you would have that power, and as much as support many of things that you would do with the line item veto, the problem that I see is that there's been contention if that's really a power of the governor. I don't believe that that's specifically written in the Pennsylvania Constitution as a line item veto, because it has been considered traditionally to be a power of the General Assembly or the legislative branch of the government.
If you give me a minute, I could dig through my Constitution and find it, but it's a power of the governor.
Okay.
I should
I'll check
know right off the
later
top of my head.
I'll check later
I
then.
can find it for you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
2 things, one's a comment and one's a question.
All right.
The comment is the public speech where you say you defund the illegal gun registry database. State legislature did that already, and the state police dug into their general funds to scrape enough money up to keep it alive.
Okay.
So it's been defunded already, but the state police are not following the wishes of the state legislature and the government at this point.
Defund them?
The governor?
Well, the governor signed the budget.
Yeah, but then the governor can always cross that out.
Well, it could. But
Besides, the governor,
it's been defunded, though.
the governor is the
So-
one who heads up the state police.
Okay. Secondly,
So the governor can tell the state police don't do that.
where do you stand on fracking?
I'm in favor of fracking. Fracking is one of the best things that's happened to Pennsylvania. The economic boom that's going on right now is amazing, especially up in north central Pennsylvania, which was devastated about a decade ago by the Adelphia bankruptcy. A lot of jobs, a lot of money coming into Pennsylvania, but we have to be careful of the environment. And one of the core issues that I stand on is the environment. In fact, in 2002, I was greener than the green guy, but that's a separate story. What I'd like to do is see a fundamental change in how we treat environmental issues. Specifically, what I'd like to see is that any kind of environmental issue, any kind of pollution is treated as a trespass. So the same thing as you walking onto somebody else's property, you can be thrown off the property. You can get a court injunction to stop you from coming on the property. I would treat pollution the same way. So if your gunk is leaking onto my property, that's a trespass. I can now use all of the remedies that we already have for trespass and use those against pollution. And I use that as well in the case of fracking. Most fracking is done very responsibly. A lot of people say, oh, it's pollution, it's pollution. Well, stop and think. It's done a mile, 2 miles underground, and there's nothing there but shale oil. By definition, it's already polluted down there. You're just bringing up some of that pollution. But you have to be careful with the drilling process as you're going through the water table. It's the first couple hundred feet as you're digging down. That's where we need to make sure that there's no leaking going on, make sure it's being done properly. So I definitely would support regulation in that area to make sure that trespassing is not going on. And I remember I hear it up in Sunbury, they've got that pile of dirt that they're building there. It's coming from fracking. Nobody knows if it's clean or dirty. My knowledge on this is about 2 weeks old, so I'm not sure where it's at right now. But I do know that the guy who owns the fracking company who's piling that dirt up alongside the Susquehanna River, he contributed $70,000 to Corbett's campaign last time.
And took him on vacation.
Took him on vacation
Yeah,
too.
took him on vacation.
Yeah. Well, you're from the neighborhood. You know better than I
Yep.
do.
So section 16 on the line.
Section 16.
Oh, he's reading.
Article 9, Section 16?
Article 4.
Article 4. 416. 416. It's like 316, but it's 416. Here we go. It's called Partial Disapproval of Appropriations Bills. The governor shall have the power to disapprove of any item or items of any bill making appropriations of money, embracing distinct items, and the part or parts of the bill approved shall be the law. And the items of appropriation disapproved shall be void unless repassed according to the rules and limitations prescribed for the passage of other bills over the executive veto.
Thank you.
Article 4, Section 16. And thank you, because I should know that number off the top of my head. Like, for example, Article 9, Section 9 does not allow for the Commonwealth to invest in private companies, which is exactly... Oh, you're flagged. Which is exactly what the Teachers' Pension Fund did that got them into so much trouble when the market tanked about 10 years ago. We wouldn't be talking about a teacher pension crisis if they hadn't invested in private companies. If they had been following the Constitution, if they had been following the job description, it wouldn't have happened. But I should know all those numbers, and now I do. 416, 416. I was in Troop 316 when I was a Boy Scout, so I should remember that. Yes, Steve?
How do you feel about medical marijuana for kids?
Medical marijuana for kids. That's an interesting combination. I feel the same way about that as I feel about any kind of medicine for kids. What does the parent say? Now, of course, the parent can go through the doctor, and I would certainly encourage the parent to go through the doctor. But, we can look at this two different ways. Who raises a child? The government with government regulations, or parents? I always come down on the side of the parents. I do it with education, I'll do it with medical matters, I'll do it with anything. Good question. It gave me pause there. Yes, ma'am.
I'll put you on the spot.
Go
here,
for it.
Okay, you have children.
3.
Or you have 3 kids. Okay, if one of them had a disease that medical marijuana, what would you choose?
Of course I would choose it. No question about it.
Okay.
In fact, I faced something like that. Not quite personally. My brother, about 15 years ago, he came down with cancer, Hodgkin's disease. And he went through the chemotherapy. Thank God he's fine today, happy, healthy, and many, many years later. But the doctor, when my brother said, this chemotherapy is killing me, man. The doctor says, you know what's the best thing you can do? Go out on a street corner and buy yourself some pot. Of course, no, I'm not going to say in public whether or not my brother did that, but of course, I would bet that if that sort of a remedy were open, then I would certainly follow that. But right now, the cruel drug laws that we have made my brother a criminal. Made the sick people criminals. And that's insane. So many things are insane about this political system. And that's just another example. So sick people, I pardon them too. Go ahead, smoke your pot, relax. Yes, Richard.
You're gonna eliminate parole.
For violent criminals.
Well, don't you think that might be a little bit too harsh in some cases? That's kind of like supporting mandatory minimums. I mean, I would think
Well-
there would be certain cases where parole could very well be justified.
Yes.
And I'd hate to see a judge who might agree that parole be justified be hamstrung by some, pompous governor who just took it upon himself to say, all cases, no parole.
Well, you're now taking the actions of the judge and laying them at my feet. If the judge thinks that parole is warranted after 2 years, he could just sentence the guy to 2 years, knowing that I would keep him in there for those 2 years. And then after that, he can get out. It'd be the judge's decision, not mine.
But there are crooked judges, and sometimes parole is
That's
the only
true.
chance to get somebody who may even be innocent out of jail. It might be their only hope.
Again, you're laying the moral actions of somebody else at my feet.
Yes.
If that's a crooked judge, if he's breaking the law, he should not sit on the bench, he should be locked up.
All right, but it's gonna happen.
Of course it's gonna happen. I can't, there's no utopia, Richard. All the good that I could do as governor of Pennsylvania is going to be a huge net plus for
I wouldn't-
Pennsylvania.
I wouldn't
Let me
put my
finish,
name-
let me finish. Am I gonna solve every problem in Pennsylvania? No. And if anybody says they are, they're crazy. It's just not gonna happen. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the bad situation that we have now, and I'm gonna make it a bit better. Once we've attacked a lot of these problems, ending parole for violent criminals, getting rid of the pot smokers and everything, then we could focus more on your judges. There was that one judge in northeastern Pennsylvania who was sentencing people to prison and getting kickbacks from the prison people.
Yeah, the kids, yeah,
Yeah.
it's up in your area,
People,
right?
people like
Yeah,
him,
yeah.
they should be in jail. So we can focus on them.
Thank goodness they are.
Yeah. We can't do everything at once, but we'll do what we can.
Okay, should be
I just think
swinging.
you're being a little bit too headstrong on that point, I wouldn't say all or nothing. I mean, there's always gotta be leeway, like I said, I mean, it's like supporting the mandatory minimums. There should always be, some room for,
I don't support mandatory minimums either. But there's also another side here. That's one of the three branches of government, the judiciary. I have no control over that. The only thing I can do is veto their pay increases.
and will you?
That depends. Right now, the cost of money in Pennsylvania is, well, in the United States is just bad. Federal Reserve notes are worth nothing.
I'll take all of yours off your hands then.
I'll swap you for beers. Good question. And you're not the first one to bring that up. The first guy to bring that up was Mark York. Remember Mark?
Of course.
I know. He had a medical.
He had a personal stake in the matter.
Yeah, he had a medical condition, and he wound up in jail over it. Now, somebody with a medical condition, I mean, the doctors could make their recommendations, but still, a violent criminal is a violent criminal regardless of the reason. Yes?
What can you tell us about the May debate that you were invited to? Is that Democrat candidates as well, and Republican?
Well, I got the call from Channel 6 on Monday, and they asked me if I would be interested in going. I was like, no, I'm not going to go. No, of course. I said, yeah, I'd be happy to go. So he said he was going to contact all the other candidates and come up with a date, and the date they were looking at was May 8th. And he said once they had settled on a date, they'd send me the email. And I just got the email Thursday. So I can't say who is and isn't going to be there, but obviously there's going to be enough people there that Channel 6 decided to go ahead with it. It's going to be taped on Thursday afternoon, May 8th, and it's going to be broadcast twice that weekend. It's going to be taped for later viewing. And matter of fact, I do know, I was told the times, I just don't recall what they are. But they're going to be that second weekend in May. What's that, Mother's Day weekend? Oh, take your mom to the debate. And I also know that I'm going to be able to bring certain people in studio with me. So if anybody wants to see firsthand how a TV studio works, very interesting. And it's going to be small. I was at Channel 6 debate for two other ones, once in '98, once in 2002. And when you're there in the studio, it's a very small room. It's very tight.
Thanks, man.
Very interesting. And I'll let you know when that happens. Just follow either my Facebook page, Ken K 2014, or my Twitter, same thing, Ken K 2014. Other questions?
Where do you stand on recreational marijuana?
On what?
Recreational marijuana.
Well, it's still a little early in the day.
Yeah, well.
Maybe later on. No, I'm in favor of recreational marijuana. I'm a libertarian. I believe you have the right run your life your way without interference, provided you respect the rights and property of others. So if you're just kicking back in your living room, smoking a joint, watching The Simpsons, there's nothing wrong with that. No victim, no crime. So, and you could ask yourself, what would Ken say? Whatever the issue is, if it's recreational marijuana, your life your way. No victim, no crime.
If you were governor, would you veto the line items that actually put a VAT on it? Because if you look at the two states that have legalized it at this point, Colorado's put a 25% sales tax on it at the retail point. At Washington, there's a 25% tax from the grower to the processor, 25% tax from the processor to the retailer.
I'm aware of all
and
that.
And 25% from the retailer to the consumer.
I've already said I will veto every tax increase. Right now, there's no tax on marijuana except that incredible tax where they take away all your life savings. You lose your job, your home, your house. And that's something else that's in here too, another power given to the governor, and that's the power to return all forfeited assets. Right now, when they take away your house and your car, it goes into unaudited accounts that get distributed to the county so they can lock up more people and seize more assets. Well, as governor, I promise day one I will return all forfeited assets related to drug crimes or any place else where it's not a real crime. No victim, no crime. Your life, your way. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, what's your position on the ACLU's lawsuit on gay marriage?
I guess I'm not familiar with the details of it, but let me just say, same thing. Your life, your way. Who am I to get in the way of true love? If you want to move in with a girl, a guy who used to be a girl thinks she's a guy thinks he's a girl, none of my business, none at all. You have the right to live your life your way. So there's also several other angles to that. Well, let me back up a second. During the last governor race, I had a soundbite that what's good for the goose and the gander is good for the goose and the goose and the gander and the gander. And that got me picked up by the San Francisco Chronicle. They started covering my race after that. They just loved it.
Well, as a follow-on to that.
Okay, I was going to follow on too, but you can direct.
But since there was one religious group in this country that has been persecuted and chased around this country because of their religious beliefs that started in Pennsylvania, the Book of Mormon was written in Northeast Pennsylvania by Joseph Smith. Would you support polygamous marriages?
You have the God-given inalienable right to live your life your way. What I would like to do is I'd like to separate society and state. I would like the government out of marriage altogether. In fact, that's the theme of this book, my novel, is the separation of society and state. There's so many things that are unconstitutional or just better handled by society, and marriage is one of them. However, there are some legal aspects to marriage. For example, inheritance, medical power of attorney, co-ownership of property, all of those things. What I would like to see is that a legal structure be built to handle that. Call it a civil union, for lack of a better term. But the government should not marry people. Marriage licenses were originally invented to deny or allow interracial marriages. I'm against that kind of stuff. It's none of the government's business. So, addressing your question directly, if two guys want to get married, two girls want to get married, guy and a girl want to get married, a guy and two girls, if three girls or five guys and two, whatever, line marriages as Heinlein would call it, they could apply for a civil union. And they would have all of the benefits currently granted to married couples, and all the responsibilities too. Because you'd have to have the same process, some kind of a divorce process. We need new words for all these things. I hate using marriage, divorce, and everything. There should be a new set of vernacular that the state does, which defends your legal rights when you do join yourself, and how those legal rights can be untangled in the event that things don't work out. So short answer is yes. Long answer is we've got to work on it. I love these questions.
It's all about the state getting tax money, man. Somebody dies, even if you got a will, you can't get in a safe deposit box. The bank has to log it down to the state and go and audit what's in it. Yeah. It's all about the state taking their rate.
All about the state taking their rate. You're right. Other questions?
What's your position on inheritance tax?
On inheritance tax? I'm against every tax. To my mind, taxation is theft. You have your money. If I'm going to hold a gun to your head and take your money, even though you may happen to be dead, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to veto every tax increase. I'm going to try and get rid of as many taxes as possible. And that's really the purpose of the separation of society and state that I was talking about. Because right now, 80% of Pennsylvania's budget is giveaway program. societal giveaway programs. 60% of the federal budget are giveaway programs. And those numbers are growing, constantly growing. I already said, 3 times the rate of inflation for more than 50 years now. But if we separated society and state, we could start taking some of these well-meaning programs and move them out of the state into an organization that, in a fit of originality, I call society. Society would look just like the state. It would have its own constitution. So a federal society would have a president and a Congress. A state society would have a governor and the state house of society. Locals would have a mayor of society, a town council of society. And they would pass, not laws, I call them guidelines, because the difference between society and the state is that society does not have the coercive power of taxation. In fact, it has no coercive powers at all. So anything that society wants to do, it has to do by asking, by persuasion. So they could pass a Social Security Act, but they couldn't garnish your wages to pay for it. They would have to ask you for the money. The state could say, oh yeah, we want to tax your property for education, but they couldn't force you to pay. And it'd be the same thing up and down the line. So, what that would do is it would put a governor on the runaway spending. Because let's say that Pennsylvania Society passes a PACE program, give drugs to the seniors, something along those lines. It's going to cost so much money. What they could do is figure out, well, it's going to cost $1 billion divided by the 12 million inhabitants of the state, keep the numbers easy, that'd come out to what, $10 a person. So they would ask you, please contribute $10, and that way the seniors would be taken care of. Now I know it's voluntary. Maybe 1 in 10 people would contribute, but you work that into the budget. So instead of asking people $10, ask them for $100. And that way, their programs are paid for, their feel-good programs. Because we can't just knock these out. We libertarians are famous for saying, end Social Security, end this, end that. You can't do that. People's lives are depending upon this. There are too many unfortunate people out there who need the help. This is the way to do it. Separate society and state. Society, if they have enough money, they can take care of these people. If they don't, they can do fundraisers. Or, if they still can't raise the money, or bake sales, and whatever it may be, if they still can't raise the money, then they have to do what we, the people, have to do, and that's tighten our belts and prioritize our spending. So the safety net will still be there for the most needy. But those people who are just living high off the hog on the state, that'll go away. Matt had his hand up first.
Yeah. Sounds great, Ken. You see this in the near future? How long is this going to take between separations between society and government? In your 8 years of governor, or how long do you think it will take?
We can start today forming society and start offloading the programs right after the election, unless Governor Corbett wants to start doing it now. We can start doing it at any time. One thing, and I forgot to mention this during taxes, is that another one of my promises is I'm going to eliminate the Pennsylvania personal income tax over 4 years. Keep cutting it down over each of the 4 years. That's because all those programs, which are currently funded by the state, which more properly belong to society, as each one is shifted out of the state, we could lower our taxes proportionately, and that way we could eliminate the local.
So you don't think that
personal income tax.
You don't think that there should be, like, I'll give welfare for example. You're saying do it now?
We could start now. We could start forming society now.
Oh.
You could run for state representative in society. I could run for governor of society. And then we could start passing our guidelines saying, well, we think we should have a PACE program. Here's how much we think it's going to cost. And put out a notice to the people of Pennsylvania, and they can contribute or not. And depending on what contributions we get, then we could help people as necessary. Because people are willing to make those contributions. Americans are more generous than anybody else. But look what a mess government has made out of it all. There's so many organizations that they work at cross purposes, they overlap. Don't get me started, too late. And George has his hand up next.
You already addressed it in what you just said, but when you talk about this division, you need to really point out that as these things are moved away from the state, you won't be taxed as heavily, so you'll have the money to contribute to your bake sales and all
That's
those
right.
other things. Because
That's
otherwise, people will just look and say, I don't have a pot to piss in today, I don't have any money for your society,
Uh-huh.
right? You gotta make sure that they understand,
Right.
they're gonna get a lot of money back that they won't have to pay to the state
Mm-hmm.
anymore.
One of the problems with the separation of society and state is it's not something you can say in 1 or 2 sentences, but I'll try and move that up forward. That's another reason why I'm touring the state now, is to get feedback from quote-unquote friendly audience, libertarians. I don't know, sometimes we're the hardest on our own people.
You know, it kind of scares me to say, yeah, private charity does it better. Yes, that's true. Okay, I live in a county that's heavily dependent on welfare. Okay, people are going to say, you want to cut my welfare check now? You know, you want to do this now?
I'm not going to cut it. What we're doing is we're moving it
Well,
over.
I understand that.
We're cutting their taxes.
I mean, I understand that, but you know how the Republicans and Democrats want to perceive us to be like heartless.
I know. See, that's why we need a plan. And the plan of the separation of society and state is the only plan that's out there which is going to finally reform the welfare state. Everybody else says, oh, let's be a little more efficient with the welfare. Oh, let's get rid of waste. It just nibbles at the edges. You're lucky if you can knock 10% off it. But it's already 80% of the Pennsylvania budget, 60% of the federal budget. We've got to do something, and it's galloping away. It's going to bankrupt us. This is the only plan that's out there that's going to attack that. Now, will some people lose their benefits? Yes. Mostly the people who don't deserve them in the first place. Yes, we can
I
find
mean,
out around here.
if you're talking about cutting the personal tax rate, which is 3.07%, you know, really be looking for economic development and growth in the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has the highest flat corporate tax rate in the country.
I know that.
And the
I got my own corporation.
Second highest, Iowa has graduated with the highest tax rate being 12%, but there's very few businesses in Iowa that pay 9.99%, which is the Pennsylvania tax rate.
Yep.
Wouldn't it be more prudent to lower the business tax rate prior to going after the personal tax rate? So, because if you lower the business tax rate first, you'll get companies coming into the state, and to offset your future cuts on personal income tax.
You know, I love a libertarian audience because we're like, which tax should we cut first? Me, I'm here to represent all Pennsylvanians, companies, individuals alike, but I would like to start with the personal income tax because that's the newest one. That was only passed in 1971. I got my first job where they're withholding taxes in 1971, and it was, I got my job, and then a couple months later they passed the Pennsylvania's personal income tax. And I was like, oh, I just started making money, and now look what they're doing. But anyway, so it's relatively new, and I like to hit that one first. We can work to cut the other taxes as well. I mean, as we separate society and state, we're going to have a lot of money that we're going to be able to just start cutting back on. But I'd be open to doing that.
Ken, if you don't mind.
I do not mind. That's why I'm here.
The state is in the red, $136 billion, I believe.
It's mandated that we have a balanced budget. What do you mean in the red?
Well, the
And we do.
deficit is $136 billion.
In Pennsylvania?
Yes.
We have,
Somebody would type in state
Maybe
debt.
underfunded mandates, where they've
Yeah, I
borrowed.
think he's talking about the unfunded.
Unfunded mandates.
Unfunded
Yeah,
liabilities.
unemployment, Medicare, Medicaid,
Yes.
welfare.
yeah, but they're in the budget that they'll be paid off as they come due. Actuarially speaking, they're taken into account in the budget. Yes, there's an overhang saying, yeah, we're on the hook for certain things in the future, but you could also look at highway construction.
All right.
We float a bond for 20 years to pay for a new turnpike. Yeah, you got 19 years of that overhang there after the first year.
Right.
So they're there,
That's-
but they're already worked into the
Okay.
tax base. And that would dictate how quickly we can cut taxes too, because we have to make sure that we meet our prior obligations.
Okay.
Pennsylvania's like in the top 10 in underfunded pension liabilities in the entire country.
Well, it depends what you mean by that, because it's a teachers' union who went outside of the Pennsylvania Constitution. Now,
Well,
I
you know-
already had an attorney say, no, it wasn't the Pennsylvania state, it was the teachers' union, which is a private corporation. It's like, don't quibble with me, it's the state. They shouldn't do it.
Do they actually follow that document?
Yeah, right.
people.
No, they don't. There's too many
I was
examples.
told on Wednesday by a township supervisor, I use that document as a sword, and it's very intimidating. I said, you're damn right I do.
That's right. We Libertarians are famous for it. You know, I ran for state representative in 2012, and I was at a legal women voters thing, and I was sitting in the middle, a Democrat on one side, a Republican on the other. And somebody in the audience says, yeah, could you give me a jobs program? Democrat's like, yeah, I'll get you a jobs program. And Republican's like, yeah, I'll give you a jobs program. And I said, excuse me, it's not in here. Are you going to do, where is it? Do you know it in there? Democrat's like, she like turns away from me. I said, they're going to violate their oath of office to give you a jobs program. I'm not going to violate my oath of office, so you can be guaranteed that I'm going to have the integrity to serve in the State House. I really put them on the hot seat. And a couple times I said, have you read this? I had a Democrat say, no. You swear an oath to uphold this.
All right.
I got a bridge for sale. Remember the Republican at the same debate, he said, well, I've skimmed it.
The actual numbers from last September. Pennsylvania, the official unfunded liability reported by the state's two major pension systems is a combined $49 billion. That assumes pension funds will grow at a rate of 7.75% every year in perpetuity. Using a much lower, safer rate of return of 3.22%, the unfunded liability of Pennsylvania's two pension plans grows to a combined $156 billion.
So now what is it? Is it Pennsylvania's liability or is it the schools?
Well, this says two. It's probably the schools and government employees' pensions.
Right.
If it were the states, then Article 9, Section 9 says they can't do that. So the state does not have that liability. It's the teachers' union that has that liability. They're a private corporation, and I'm against bailouts of private corporations.
Just as a side question, but do you remember how many disinterested, and I mean disinterested, that they weren't related to the candidates or they weren't news people, that came to that legal women's voter debate that you were talking about?
Well, that's always difficult to say. My own guesstimate is that local League of Women Voters think half the people there have to be political.
So what did 20, 15, I mean, how many people?
Oh, there were probably about 100 people, maybe 100, 130, because it was maybe 12, 15 chairs wide and about 15 chairs deep. So what's that? That's about seating for 200, and the place was pretty full. It was over 100.
Well, when I ran in May, we did the same thing, and we had 8 people.
8? Who staged it?
Legal women voters.
Really? Wow.
In a district with 60,000 registered voters.
Yeah, there's 45,000 registered voters in 153rd where I was running.
We had 8 people show up.
Well, they're the 8. They're the ones you should recruit from among.
Well, of those 8, 7 I was able to talk to before they left, and they said they'd vote for me. So I thought it's a pretty good percentage, but 8 people.
Yeah, my guesstimate is about half of them
It's a shame.
were unrelated to one candidate or another. It sounds like your percentage was higher than that. Because
Well,
we were
there
able
were
to
other
convince.
people in the room that were related, but there were 8 people that were not. But that's all the people that showed up, and there was only one debate. 8 people.
Yeah, I only had one. No, actually, I had 2. I had another with the Civic Association. That was fun, too. That was the one where they asked about the jobs program. And I have the video of my League of Women Voters state rep debate out on my YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube, search my last name, you'll find me. And I'm throwing all these things out there. I'm taking video of this right now, and this time tomorrow, it'll be up on YouTube. Matter of fact, I may just do it right now while we're sitting here. Nice high-speed internet. Oh no, I just got files put in yesterday. But anyway, it's all out there.
One of the questions that the Pittsburgh papers asked us was about the Turnpike Commission.
Can you guess?
My answer was that I would have shut it down yesterday, but of course the other candidates wouldn't. But how would you answer that?
Well, same thing. Transportation is too important to be left in the hands of government. Look what happened when we deregulated the telecommunications industry. We went from a monopoly where you had these big clunky phones to little handheld things that would make Captain Kirk look like he's got a cheesy thing from last year. The same sort of thing can happen if we get government out of the transportation industry. So I would love to see the Pennsylvania Turnpike sold to a private investor. So they would have to keep it up, and they have to attract customers. It should just be like anything else. If they don't do a good job, well, people aren't gonna use their turnpike.
They need to do a forensic audit and put a lot of people in jail.
Well,
That may be true too. But I'm not running for Attorney General.
Yeah.
Maybe we'd actually have good roads without potholes.
Well, you know, when you put government in charge of transportation, we get traffic jams. You put them in charge of education, Johnny can't read. You put them in charge of the water supplies, we get these droughts. You put them in charge of electricity, we get rolling brownouts. Too important to leave in
well,
the
I
hands
mean,
of government.
I drove the turnpike out this morning and through a snowstorm from Pittsburgh, and
Uh-huh.
they did a very good job of clearing it. It's not that government can't do it, it's that they can't do it without spending a boatload of money.
That's right, they can't do it well.
And I go out of my way to not drive the turnpike since the Rendell administration stole money from the Turnpike Commission to pay for public transit in the two corners of the state.
Oh, and they do that right and left.
I mean,
with the
before,
gas
before the
tax.
Rendell administration came in, all the money that was collected by the turnpike stayed with the turnpike to operate the turnpike, operate the employees, to pay the pensions of the turnpike employees and of Troop T of the state police that actually operates on the turnpike and its pensions. So it was totally self-funded.
Yeah, it was a closed corporation,
It
more or
was,
less.
it was. Now, the Rendell administration came in and with their crony people that were in the House, they're stealing money from the Turnpike Authority, Turnpike Commission, to pay for public transit. And now the Turnpike Commission has to borrow money to cover the money, the outflows that go to pipe for public transit. The gas tax that just got kicked in, and thank God I live 2 miles from the border, I can go over to Jersey and buy gas
Yeah.
for $3.15 a gallon. You know, the fact of the matter is, a big chunk of that is going to public transit too. You know, if they want public transit funded, raise the tax on diesel fuel that's sold to the public transit companies. Raise the tax on electricity that's sold to the public
Excuse
transit
me, they're
companies.
not taxes, they're user
I
fees.
understand,
If
yeah.
you use the roads, you pay
You
the
pay a fee,
user fee.
yeah.
If you don't use the roads, you don't pay.
It's just the same reason, you know, you look at the federal.
That's why it shouldn't go to
not
mass
state, but
transit,
on a
though.
federal level,
Right.
the federal government assumes every gallon of diesel fuel is going in a semi, which is why they keep the federal tax on diesel so high, because if you want to buy a diesel car that gets good mileage, you're paying a high rate of taxes because they're assuming you're driving a semi. It makes no sense.
And it says in here that the gas tax has to be used on the highways. I'm not gonna dig that out, but it's in there too. And they can't do it. Half of Pennsylvania's gas user fee, I'm not gonna call it a tax, half of it is going toward things that are not related to building.
Is that the original 32% before the new? Because I've been trying to figure that out, where
Yes,
that
and you know-
32 cents is going.
You and me both. I do not have the new numbers yet.
It's
So-
right now, it's the 15th highest gas tax in the country now with the new
Yeah.
increase.
Although they've rejiggered it now, right? So it's not a direct retail tax like it used to be.
It's a wholesaler tax.
It's a
They just pass it
wholesale
along.
tax, and so it's.
It's passed.
It's just
I'm
a
sure
pass along.
it's a pass along.
Yep, I get on. Steve?
Real quick, is everybody cool with letting this roll, or do we want to wrap this up and get to LPP business?
Are you asking everyone to listen to him talk or you talk?
Well, you know, it was real funny. When I was in Northampton County, I had video, and my camera battery runs about an hour and 5 minutes or something like that. The video from Northampton County is about 40 minutes long, because the other 25 minutes is Ed. I had to edit them out. Edit? Edit.
Ken, just one more question if you don't mind.
I do not mind. That's why I'm here.
Okay. You said it looks like it's gonna be a three-way race, okay? Do you know that there's a Green Party candidate?
I do. There is one announced Green Party candidate, and I will be speaking at the Green Party convention on March 1st.
So,
You know, I'm the first Libertarian who ever spoke at a Pennsylvania State Green Party convention and at a national Green Party convention.
the numbers will be even.
That was while she was still a Green.
The numbers will be even less. It's probably 1 in 6, 1 in 7 votes with a four-way race.
That's, it
If
could
they
be.
get on the ballot.
Yeah. Say everybody makes it on the ballot.
Which
Okay.
is a challenge for them.
Yep.
Unless they could help.
Yeah, I've
could
actually
be.
been arguing with
It's true.
the York County Green Chair as we've been sitting here. So,
I mean, would the state be open to helping them with their petitions, or they help us with ours? Circulate 2 petitions at the same time?
What? You can't.
straight out the door.
You can't?
No, because if somebody signs a petition for me, they can't sign for any other governor candidate. That's challengeable.
Oh, okay.
Make a U-turn left and walk in the house.
Any other questions? Any answers?
If we get it done early, if we get everything hammered on primary day,
Uh-huh.
after the fact, we could sit down and say, hey, we've got resources.
And you know what I plan to do? I plan to challenge ourselves. What I want to do is go through everyone in advance and get a sure number. If we wind up paying paid petitioners, I've already talked to several paid folk about this, I'm gonna be paying 25 cents a signature. But if it has a sure number next to it, they get $1 for that sure number. And if they fill up an entire sheet, they get another kicker, and things like that. I don't know what the sheets look like, so I can't say what it is right now. But that's something, advice I got from Ed Rendell back in 2002, how to finance paid petitioners. Ed Rendell helped my campaign a lot in 2002. Everybody remember what happened in Virginia a couple months ago with the Libertarian candidate?
It's like one
The Democrats were bankrolling the Libertarian, 6 figures worth of stuff.
I mean, you could probably get Alistair Schwartz's campaign to get paid for that.
Yeah, well,
Or a donor.
now, you guys were on the state board. A couple of months ago, Paul Rossi sent out a strategy memo warning us of infiltrators and to be ready for a challenge. But one thing that was in there is that he had his own poll, and he found that if a Libertarian is in the race this year, he loses. If there's no Libertarian in the race, well then he stands a good chance of winning.
He's gonna lose anyway.
Dave John in Delaware County, the chair of Delaware County, had a great idea, and I took it to the next level. I went to Corbett, and I said, tell you what, if you pass our Voters' Choice Act before the convention in February, Voters' Choice Act will even out the playing field. So instead of us needing 16,639 signatures, we need the same as Corbett, which is 2,000. Should level the playing field. Voters' Choice Act, Senate Bill 195. I said, if you get it passed by our convention, I won't run for governor. Figured he'd want, just his self-interest would say, yeah, okay, let's do that. He said, let me think about it for a little bit. He went away for 2 weeks. I brought up the idea with Senator Mike Fulmer, who's the prime sponsor of the bill, and he was excited. He says, this could work, this could work. So we're waiting for a couple of weeks for Corbett to come back. Corbett finally comes back and goes, forget it, I'm not gonna do it. It's like, So now, I'm going to the Democrats, saying, you know, if you pass our Voters' Choice Act, I'll run. 2 days after Corbett turned me down, I announced my intent to seek the nomination. And Senator Fulmer made sure that a copy of that initial release went into Corbett's hands. You know, some people in the party have criticized me, and out of the party too. They say, dude, don't you see you're just a pawn in their game? It's like, yes, but we're in the game. You know, 10 years ago, we weren't even in the game. Now we're on the board. We actually have an influence in how things are happening in Pennsylvania. It's exciting. Especially somebody like me who's been in the party for what, over 20 years? When I first started running, I said, yeah, I'm a Libertarian. People said, oh, I'm Presbyterian. Those days are over. They know who we are. God bless Ron Paul.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, then tell you what, let me wrap it up. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for the practice. The fact that you haven't thrown rocks at me tells me that I'm on the right track here with the Libertarian Party presenting the Libertarian message. He's starting the very stuff.